The other problem that I think we found when we were using generic AI tools is that they weren't equipped to do legal specific communications. That's something that like Ruli did better. We wanted AI to help us with doing initial drafts of like response letters or emails that we would be sending. One of my team members actually used it during the demo to kind of draft an initial draft to a claim letter. The first thing that she noted was like she felt like the tone of the email much more matched her own. It really has this like prompt engineering like tool in it, which everybody loved. We're not AI experts as lawyers. And so it was so nice to have a tool that would take what we were asking it and it would generate a prompt that was better for the AI to generate that response that you needed.
Thanks for doing the deep dive on Ruli. So I want to start with the vendor hall. So it's filled with so many different options for general counsels such as yourself. How do you begin to choose what's right for your business?
Yeah. Yeah, because I actually when I came in 2024, we had very limited legal tech at Newsweek. But the team really needed all sorts of tools. And so I think a couple of things. I think you will have to assess what the team needs, and based on what the business needs from the legal department, and that can kind of help decide what legal tech tools you should start even looking at. Because I mean the world of legal tech is so large, right? And most of it is stuff I don't really need, to be honest. But I knew from the start that I wanted to do some kind of AI tool, because it was really one. I mean, it's kind of critical to have an AI tool, especially when you have a small team like mine, to be able to explain quickly, do research quickly, doing drafting. It's just so much easier if you get a first draft from AI. And so, but I knew it had to be something that was built for legal teams, particularly for in-house legal teams, which I'll be honest, I didn't really know about until I started kind of researching into it, that there were tools that were specific to in-house legal teams. And so that was, that was part of the discovery process for me of like figuring out exactly what we're looking for and making sure that tool was tailored to whatever we needed.
Yeah. So you look at your team first. You look at who you're serving, and then you start to canvas the variety of tools and understand like requirements. What did you know your requirements before going in, or were you kind of also on an educational journey as you understood these were tech companies helping in-house, right? Who knew that that was a category, like you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was a little both, right?
Yeah.
So I think we did know we wanted something that was easy to use, didn't require a lot of um, onboarding because it was a complicated tool because I think my legal team is fairly tech savvy, but it's not something where we need to be coding, we need to be being better with our prompt engineering, that kind of stuff. We needed something that we could just use right out of the box. And then we needed something that was we could trust. And what I mean by that is, we needed something that gave us citations that we could go back and check. Okay, you're telling me this is the rule. Where are you getting this information from? And we wanted something that was actually technologically, you could call it AI. It's not something that was like, it's a productivity tool that's like wrapped up with language that says AI, right? Because there's so much of that out there, right? Everybody wants to say they're AI, but they're not really. But then it was like I had to go through demos, I had to sandbox because you really have to use the product to really understand whether or not it's the right product for you and whether it meets all those requirements. And then in the process, you're like, oh, you learn all of these other functionalities that it has. And you're like, oh, this is so great. And then you start thinking, oh, here are all the other ways that I didn't even think about we could be using AI to elevate our practice. And, so it was both. It was both an educational process, but also we knew what we were looking for from an AI tool.
I'd love to dig into this, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like in the journey of choosing a tool, you chased requirements, but then also trust, right? So the teams that you met with, the technology that you saw, how did you start to vet trust as part of that process?
Sure. So, I mean, part of it started with the demos. So, we would have questions ready for the team, like, as they were demoing the product for us. And there were questions that we kind of knew what the answers were already. And so we could tell whether or not it was giving us correct information. And then some of them, you could tell that it was citing back to credible sources, things like that. And then others, I mean, if I'm being honest, there were a couple of demos that we had where the AI made mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, you never want that to
So
happen
scary.
during a demo, right? Yeah. And like if it's happening during a time when they're trying to sell it to you, what's it going to do when you're like in the thick of it and you need to make sure that it's accurate. So that's kind of how it worked out. So, when we were doing the demos, we had questions, and then the sandbox was really like where we figured out where we could sit down and kind of it would do a deep, a memo, for example, and we just went through and looked at all of the sources. And for what Ruli, which is what we ultimately chose, it was both the speed at which it did it, like it would pump out something that was really decent very quickly, and then we could go back and kind of see where is it getting this information from. And like all AI tools, there's some correction that needs to be made, some judgment calls that you have to like kind of put in that you wouldn't do the same as whatever the AI is pumping out. But I think that generally was, how we were able to figure out like which is the right tool and which is not. Because some of the other tools, like they had access to legal databases that we know and trust, like case law databases, but they were slow, or they weren't the advanced level of AI that like something like a Chat GPT or Claude AI can do, right? But those are not legal specific, and they honestly they don't review legal specific sources or law firm texts and things like that, so or regulations and statutes. And so we needed something that was a combo of the two, right? That could really do the powerful kind of LLM that's there, but also kind of focus its research, its source bank on legal sources, which is the only thing that we can really rely on. So,
How long did the process take you?
probably a few months.
Yeah.
We tried out we demoed probably 4 tools, and then sandboxed 3 of them. Um, and yeah, so that's how it worked out. And then it ultimately came to my whole team kind of deciding what did they like best, and then of course pricing, and that's kind of how we came to it.
Yeah. Do you, you talked about operating from a place where you know what the information should tell you, right, coming out of the machine. And there was this mystery, right, around AI before you get your hands into it. And so
Right.
you saw a decent cross section. Is there a big gap in the capabilities of the technology tools? Like as you assess Ruli and you assess some of the other ones, is really far ahead.
Some of them, yes. That is what we noticed. So Ruli has this function where it can like you can tell it like, "Oh, I have this level risk tolerance." And so I think the responses that I received from Ruli were more practical, um, more useful from like I can tell it all sorts of information about Newsweek specific, media specific. Here's what we are worried about. Here's what we're not so worried about. Because that kind of risk judgment is only something that I, as a lawyer for the company, having interacted with the business, can really tell it. But then once I was able to tell it that information, it could pump out, I think, much better sourced and practical information that I needed to help the business make a decision, and sometimes make decisions for myself. If it was an area of the law that I'm not familiar with. I'm a New York-based attorney, but Newsweek is a global brand. I loved that Ruli had, um, EU, UK, law. So for my team that's in the UK, it's very easy for them to use that. That wasn't true for all of the AI tools, right? So that was like a big piece of it, that they had that scope in the background and the sources that they have. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. It feels like a perfect glove fit,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you really have to try it on before you know that it fits.
100%, yeah.
Were there magical moments for the team you remember from like the demo times where they said, "Ah, this is the tool. It's doing the thing that I expected it to do"?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, something that we really wanted we wanted AI to help us with was kind of doing initial drafts of like response letters or emails that we would be sending, substantive legal emails that maybe we want to have a little bit of research, but we want to make sure we're distilling it in the right way. And so one of my team members actually used it during the demo to kind of draft an initial draft to a claim letter, or a letter from, an employee saying XYZ bringing whatever claims.
Right.
And, the first thing that she noted was like she felt like the tone of the email much more matched her own, or the letter, I should say. And because sometimes I think the other tools that we were using were less good at capturing tone, and less good at adapting the email so it sounded less like AI wrote it versus because I think that's the other problem that I think we found when we were using generic AI tools is that they weren't equipped to do legal specific communications, and I don't just mean like citation to legal stuff and processing legal, information, but more just like how is it that lawyers talk to business people? How do they talk to opposing counsel? How do they talk to outside counsel? That's something that like Ruli did better in terms of like understanding, as long as we were, giving that information into Ruli, and Ruli has this like prompt engineering like tool in it, which everybody loved, because again, we're not AI experts as lawyers. And so it was so nice to have a tool that would take what we were asking it and it would generate a prompt that was better for the AI to generate that response that you needed. And so, there's a lot of things that I've learned from using AI. Like I tell it, like I want it to be a conversational tone, or I want it to be a stern tone because I'm talking to opposing counsel or something like that. And it'll produce that. But I just thought Ruli did a much better job of kind of learning that on the fly without me having to prompt it.
Yeah. You're training it, but then it's also training you
Yeah.
to be future AI type lawyer who's powered by this technology. That's
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
You talked about use cases a little bit, right? And so there were some use cases maybe during the demo process that you said, okay, well, these are pain points. We want to solve them as a lean team. How did those use cases evolve as you started getting more comfortable with the technology?
Sure. Yeah, so I think so a couple of things. So we kind of came in looking at it as like a first draft, tool. Which is there's so much that we do, and the value of it and just that is so great. But then, for example, like we're doing a lot more M&A activity at the company, and so but we don't have the resources to be having due diligence being done by outside counsel, so we have to do it in-house. And like Ruli has this tool that will do like a data grid where you'll put in a bunch of contracts and you say, pull out all of the assignment clauses, and it'll just create that chart for you that, previously you would be spending, hours doing that work. Or, I needed to kind of process, when I came in, I had a lot of cases that had been litigation that had been running for years prior to my coming here. And so there's like complicated pieces to the case. It was great to be able to like feed, the thousands of pieces of briefing and discovery that had already come in and have it shoot out a summary for me, in what would have taken me hours, took only a few minutes, and then it like cited to all of the documents, which was like, that's amazing, so I could go back and check, where is this? So there were all these ways that I was just basically, that I and the team were using to kind of speed us up on our work. So like the other thing is, my attorney, my team member who's works on privacy law, you know, there's just so much changing. And so the Ruli has this alert system where you can monitor what are the new developments. And what's so nice is that it's happening in real time. What we did in the past was we waited for law firm alerts, of which I still get many of them, but it's nice to have it kind of consolidated in one email, one place from Ruli.
Yeah.
And it's kind of already processed for me. And oftentimes I'm getting it before I get a law firm alert. And so that's nice, It may not have the analysis, but it will at least have like, this law just got passed and here's the regulatory agency just put out regulations. Here's what it is. And
Yeah.
that's really nice. So
It's so empowering.
Yeah,
for an in-house team to have that information. You
exactly.
always feel like you're on your heels in-house, you're outnumbered,
Totally.
right? How's that transformation been for the business, right? Are they seeing the legal function move in a different way or at a different pace or spend more time with them, which is what I'm sure
Very.
your team wants to do?
Yeah. I think so. I think that that the legal team is more responsive, quick, more, they're quicker in their responses. They are more thorough in their responses because they're spending less time uh, doing research, making sure that everything is right. So I do think that the business feels the impact on it. I mean, the number one kind of feedback I get about my team is how responsive they are and how quick they are to respond. And I do think Ruli enables that because, I mean, we get random questions. I mean, this is just, that's the nature of being an in-house lawyer is like you're dealing with random things that you didn't think that you would, you'd have to deal with. I was certainly not a specialist in, right? Like, tax law, like, there's so many issues that I like would never have covered. But, it's nice to have a tool that I can go at least get an idea of the like what's the scope of the problem. Because sometimes it's like I still have to go to outside counsel for something, but it's nice that I can get a picture of what I'm supposed to be looking at, narrow down the issue a little bit more, as opposed to being like, I have this issue, please help me with it. I'm saving money and time by just helping narrow down those issues, narrow the scope so that I'm not getting some 40-page memo from the law firm. I'm getting something very focused because at least understand the scope of the issue a little bit better. And so I think that's helpful,
Yep.
for dealing with all the myriad of issues that we have to deal with. And like, we're all generalists, although, my team has business areas that they support specifically, because you develop a relationship with those business units, they'll sometimes come to you with like random questions that you don't think that would come up, like with the sales team. Like, I have this like confidential, NDA issue. Like, can you help me with that? And so I think having a tool that can help you be that generalist is really important.
Talk about the implementation cycle because I feel like AI is so fast, right?
Oh yeah,
We've heard horror stories in the past about technology, I mean, from other departments, because sometimes we're brought in to try to defend, right, our positions on those. Um, I feel like it really came in pretty quickly for you, but then there was this additional steps of adoption, right, that you saw, and it sounds like the business also saw, right? It saw you move faster, the quality of advice, the time that they got from you, the consistency, right, of availability from the team. All those things are starting to expand. Um, how talk about the implementation? Like, how long did it take for those milestones for the legal function? Because we talk about AI powering it, but the legal function is still measured on, whether you're AI or not, right?
right, right.
Yeah. What
Um,
does that look like?
so implementation, I think, um, part of it was one, you know, it's really such an easy tool to use from the beginning. So um it wasn't something that, my team really needed to spend a lot of time learning how to use, etc. Like it was something they could start using immediately. Um and then for me, I think we have regular team meetings. And so we talk about what are things that you guys are seing. And I mean, regardless of whether it's AI or not, we talk about how are ways we can deal with this solution. And oftentimes it's like, oh, have you plugged this into Ruli and see what it spits out? Um, so like, things like simple things like, oh, we're having this process issue, right? Where, for example, like, you know, our ad ops team, advertising operations team, they need to implement a sponsored content campaign. They need to know what are the steps they need to take. Okay, like I'll spit in like what the rules are. Can you create a checklist for me? And Ruli will do that and we'll go through it and so I think it's like we collaborate with each other on what are those different ways we can use it based on kind of whatever gaps and problems we're seeing, in the business. And so it was pretty quick. I think like I don't know that the business always knows that we're using AI in the background. I think they assume that we are because, I mean, I've spoken to the executives about that and, um, you know, trying to explain to them, like, we are trying to innovate in order to service, the business better. But I think they see the impact of it from the speed at which they're seeing our advice and responses, and so, so they feel the impact regardless of whether they understand that it's because we're innovating and using tools and, collaborating more, you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's interesting how you're talking about adoption at the company, because it's not just the legal function. Obviously, the company's feeling it. What happens if Ruli goes away tomorrow? To the team, to the company. It's a scary, it's a
yeah.
scary storm cloud coming, right? What happens?
What happens? I mean, you're gonna see us take a lot longer to do what we're doing. Um, and I also think you're gonna see us consulting outside counsel a lot more. Um, and so you'll see not only like kind of slower response times with substantive responses, you'll see also, we just it's not possible for a lawyer to be an expert in everything in every jurisdiction. Although, Newsweek being a global brand, we have issues across the globe, right? So I need to consult counsel to do a lot of the things that I need to do. But now, if it's a really small issue, I can kind of rely on Ruli. If that were to go away, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I would feel like I need to consult somebody in California to know about this employment rule, right? For this employee in California. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable kind of making a decision without having that tool. And so I think that's, it would be harder for us to kind of move at the speed and um, certainty that we kind of have, or at least comfortableness that we have with the tool.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm sure the team feels the same way.
yeah,
I'm hoping that now that you've revealed AI and what it could do for the legal function,
yeah,
the team is also empowered, I think, not just in the role that they have today, but for the various things that I'm sure they want to take on for the business to help serve it.
yeah.
But they just didn't have the availability to. So are you starting to see that happen, right? So really comes in, and you and your department have now become a bit more tech forward. As a result, are you taking on more aggressive business goals, regulatory challenges, compliance issues, right? Proactively,
Yeah.
are you seeing
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so. I think we do feel more empowered to do that. I think I think what it is that we spend more time doing the high level judgment work that we're supposed to be doing. And so when you're doing that, you can be more of a strategic partner for the business as opposed to actually I have to do all of this research because I'm worried that this is going to be some huge compliance issue, and you're just kind of spending all of your time on the nitty-gritty, and you're not spending your time on, like, kind of the high level strategic partnership that my team has to do. We're both an execution team, so we have to execute on everything, but also we're supposed to be strategic partners, and so I do feel like we're able to do more business partnership, um, help them take what I consider smart risks and identifying good opportunities because we're not spending all of our time doing research, managing outside counsel. There's like, yeah, there's a strategic function there that we're able to play better than without it. So
I mean, that's amazing. Take me on the ride, Zahreen. I
yeah.
love it. So, three things that you would tell future or new incoming GC that's starting to do the same journey. What are they're walking into that vendor hall, they're getting the inbounds of all the cold emails that say I could fix legal with special AI. What do you tell them? What are three things that they should do to navigate this?
So I think one, know what it is you want out of AI, and know that it's not going to solve all of your problems. So I think if you really understand what your goals are, that will help you immensely to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? Because um if you go in kind of like, I want to use AI, but you don't have like set goals, you are going to be completely overwhelmed with everything that's out there. And also, you're going to be led down a wrong path because it may be a great tool, but it's not the tool you need. And so I think that's the issue, right? Like, I also think there's like a lot of distrust in the legal community with AI, and I understand why, right? Like
Yeah.
we all read the case, the sanctions motions about
Right.
cases being hallucinated, but I think if you understand what the purposes are that you're using AI for, and you always trust but verify, just like you would with a client, you trust but verify what they're saying. It's the same thing with AI. It will kind of, I think, the trust issues that are there, for a lot of lawyers will dissipate, and they'll see that, like, actually AI is there to elevate your practice, not replace you. Because I think that's ultimately where those fears are coming from. And so just really knowing what you need from the tool, what your goals are for your team, what you need them to do, and then, that will help guide you. And then I think you have to test out tools. Like, never kind of take a tool based solely on a demo. You have to ask for a sandbox. And if a company is not giving you a test run, like, don't go with that. I would never. That's for AI, that's for any SaaS tool that you're using. So, and so I think we did encounter a few kind of companies that we were looking at that wouldn't allow us to do a sandbox. And so I was like, I need a proof of concept. I can't, do this just on a demo. And so, like, they were kind of out of the running from there. So I think those are my big tips for that. If you know what you're doing, you know what you want it to do and what you need it for, and you really test the tools out. And like, I always asked for, like, 2-3 weeks, because I think honestly we get busy. And so if you have 1 week, like, the time flies by and you didn't even use it, um, and your team didn't use it, and then you're like, well, what do we do now? And so I try to ask for a little more time, and then actually kind of sit down with the team and discuss, how did it go? What were the good things? What were the bad things? So that they really feel invested in the decision making, and will likely, use it if they felt like you heard them, and, you were getting a tool to make their lives easier. So,
Any final words?
no, thank you for having me.